A massive interstellar distress signal pulsed across the void, cutting through subspace like a scream. The Galactic Council's central hub, a gleaming ring world spanning millions of kilometers, intercepted the transmission within seconds. High Chancellor Velrix stood frozen in the council chamber, his elongated fingers twitching in disbelief. The holographic projection above the dais flickered, displaying a burning planet, one of their own. This is impossible, Velrix whispered. Who dares? His words choked in his throat as the image sharpened. It wasn't just destruction. It was precision annihilation. The planet's orbital defenses had been reduced to drifting slag. The capital city, once a thriving metropolis, was now a smoldering crater. And then, a final transmission. You wanted war. Humanity has answered. The chamber erupted into chaos. Dozens of alien dignitaries screeched in panic, their forms twisting in agitation. Others remained silent, their features unreadable. But they all knew what this meant. The humans had arrived. For centuries, the Galactic Council had treated them as an insignificant upstart species, useful as traders, expendable as mercenaries. When humanity petitioned for a seat in the council, they were laughed out of the chamber. When they demanded respect, they were ignored. And when they warned the council against exploiting human colonies in the fringe systems, they were met with silence. Then came the Sorisk incident, a council-led fleet pacified, a human outpost that had refused to comply with new resource extraction laws. 100,000 civilians were eradicated under the guise of maintaining order. The council had assumed humanity would grumble, protest, maybe retaliate with some diplomatic sanctions. They were wrong. Now humanity's warships were here. The Great Hall's lights flickered as emergency alarms screamed through the station. A deep, thrumming noise reverberated through the structure. It was a sound none of them had ever heard before. Velrix turned to his defense minister, a reptilian Durkan who had gone deathly pale. What in the void is that noise? The minister swallowed hard. That is the sound of reality breaking. Then the chamber's massive viewport darkened. Something was eclipsing the local star. A shadow fell over the ring world. Velrix stepped forward, his twin hearts pounding as the holographic interface auto-zoomed on the source of the disturbance. The entire chamber went deathly silent. Outside, a colossal human war fleet had entered orbit. At the head of the formation was a behemoth, a dreadnought unlike anything the council had ever seen. Its black hull swallowed the light, its surface lined with millions of adaptive plating segments. Plasma fields shimmered across its armored ridges, shifting like liquid metal. Smaller ships, each the size of a city, flanked it in a perfect, unshakable formation. Countless destroyers, carriers, and gunships followed behind, their weapons primed and locked onto the station. And then the fleet spoke. A voice, impossibly deep and resolute, thundered through every transmission channel, vibrating through the bones of every being aboard the ring world. This is Admiral Jonas Rivik of the Terran Ascendancy. The time for words is over. The station shuddered as the warfleet adjusted its position, an unmistakable act of dominance. Velrix could barely breathe. The Council had ruled this galaxy for over 10,000 years. They had faced insurgencies, rogue warlords, even starborn anomalies that devoured entire systems. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity, a species that did not bow, a species that did not break, a species that had come to collect a debt of blood. Velrix turned to his generals. How long until we can deploy our defense fleet? The silence was answer enough. They had no fleet. Oh, the Council had ships, thousands of them. But they were scattered across the galaxy, spread thin from years of complacency. And the closest armada? At least 2 weeks away. They had assumed humanity lacked the capability to project power. But humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. Velrix gritted his teeth. Open a channel to the humans. We must negotiate before this escalates further. The comms officer hesitated. Sir, I don't think they're interested in negotiation. On the view screen, the dreadnought's forward batteries began charging. By the stars. Velrix whispered. Humanity wasn't here to talk. They were here to make the Council pay. And it was already too late. Velrix's mind raced, calculating probabilities, searching for any strategy that might avert the impending catastrophe. But every scenario led to the same grim conclusion. Humanity had outmaneuvered them. There was no fleet to defend the ring world, no reinforcements that could arrive in time. And if the humans had brought this many warships, their campaign of vengeance wasn't limited to just one system. The Great Hall trembled as the energy signatures of the human fleet surged to combat readiness. The massive viewport flickered with the glow of their primary weapon systems charging. The sheer force of their presence, of their will made manifest in metal and fury, pressed down upon Velrix like a suffocating weight. The council chamber, once the pinnacle of galactic authority, now felt like a prison. Admiral Rivik, Velrix forced his voice to remain steady as he stepped toward the central hollow communicator. We acknowledge the gravity of the situation. However, total war benefits no one. Let us negotiate. The response came instantly without hesitation. Negotiate. Rivik's voice was calm, but beneath it, there was something sharper than any plasma blade. Like you negotiated with the Saurus colony? Like you negotiated with the hundreds of thousands you burned from orbit while they begged for mercy? Velrix felt the piercing stares of the other council members. Some of them had approved the attack on Saurisk, believing humanity too weak to retaliate. Now those same beings sat in stunned silence, their arrogance crumbling. Rivik continued, his voice like the grinding of tectonic plates. This is not a discussion. This is an ultimatum. The holoscreen flickered, and suddenly, a series of tactical displays appeared, detailing human fleet formations across multiple council-controlled systems. Velrix's throat went dry. The humans weren't just here. They were everywhere. Your forces have already been neutralized in the Erixus cluster. The supply lines to your outer colonies? Cut. Your shipyards? Seized or reduced to molten slag. The Galactic Council does not control this war anymore. We do. Velrix clenched his fists. The humans had struck with terrifying precision, dismantling the Council's power base before they had even realized they were at war. The realization dawned on him like an eclipse. Humanity had not just come for revenge. They had come to take the galaxy itself. The Great Hall erupted into panicked arguments. The representatives of weaker species clamored for surrender. The war-hardened factions demanded a last-stand defense. The few remaining loyalists to Velrix turned to him for leadership, but he had no orders to give. Chancellor, one of his generals rasped, his scaled skin glistening with sweat. If we do not act, they will destroy us. We must retaliate. Velrix turned to the tactical display, eyes scanning for any vulnerability. But there was none. The humans had left nothing to chance. He knew deep down that any move he made now would be nothing more than the thrashing of a dying beast. His silence was answer enough. The general paled. Rivik's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Your council is obsolete. Your rule ends today. The warship's main cannons hummed louder, and the great hall shook again. This time, not from the weight of dread, but from the raw gravitational energy of weapons that could carve moons in half. You will surrender the council and dissolve your authority immediately. If you refuse. The tactical map flickered again, this time showing a live feed of a heavily populated council world. Thousands of human warships hung over its atmosphere like an iron storm. Velrix knew what was coming before it even happened. Observe. The dreadnought in orbit fired a single shot. A thin, searing beam of light lanced down, striking the planet's capital. There was no explosion, just a momentary flash before an entire city vanished. Not destroyed. Erased. Velrix's breath caught in his throat. A weapon of that magnitude, that precision, it was beyond any technological capability the Council had ever seen. The message was clear. Humanity could burn their empire to the ground without breaking a sweat. There will not be a second demonstration, Rivik said coldly. Decide now. Velrix turned to his fellow councillors. They were frozen, their faces locked in terror. For thousands of years, they had been the ultimate authority in the galaxy. Now, in a matter of hours, their rule had collapsed. His hands shook as he reached for the hollow interface. His voice trembled as he spoke the words that would change the course of history forever. The Galactic Council submits. A long silence followed. Then finally Rivik spoke. Smart choice. The warships descended through the turbulent upper atmosphere, their massive forms casting mile-long shadows over the besieged capital city below. The once pristine skyline of the Galactic Council's heart now lay in ruins, smoke rising from countless impact craters where orbital bombardments had torn through planetary defenses. Fires raged across the grand boulevards, and broken towers leaned at precarious angles. The entire world trembled under the weight of humanity's wrath. On the bridge of the UNS Endeavour, Admiral Marcus Steele stood motionless, his gaze locked on the holographic display projecting real-time data of the battlefield. His fleet had punched through the planetary shield hours ago, and now ground forces were establishing full dominance. Admiral, a voice called. It was Captain Delara Vasquez, her uniform immaculate despite the chaos. The Council Guard has fully retreated into the Citadel. Resistance is minimal. Steele exhaled slowly. The Council had underestimated humanity's resolve, its capacity for war, its willingness to do what was necessary. Even now, as his forces spread across the capital like wildfire, he knew the real battle had yet to begin. Patch me through to General O'Connell. A moment later, the grizzled face of General Patrick O'Connell, leading the ground invasion, appeared on the main holoscreen. Behind him, the towering wreckage of a Council war walker smoldered, human marines advancing past it with precise formations. "We've got him, Admiral," O'Connell reported. "They're boxed in. No reinforcements, no supply lines. They're running scared." Steele nodded. "What's their response?" O'Connell's face darkened. "They're asking for a ceasefire. An emergency negotiation." Steele let that sink in. After all the betrayals, the manipulations, the decades of humanity being treated as a lesser species, the Council wanted to talk. Now, when it was too late. "No negotiations," Steele said, his voice like steel. "Not after what they did." O'Connell grinned. "My thoughts exactly. We push forward." The connection cut and Steele turned back toward the viewport. The Citadel loomed in the distance, an ancient fortress of alien craftsmanship, reinforced with layers of energy shielding and defensive turrets. But against humanity's might, it was little more than a mausoleum for those inside. A new voice cut through the bridge's tense silence. "Admiral, long-range sensors are picking up an inbound fleet. Transponder signals confirm they belong to the Zelari Dominion." Steele frowned. The Zelari were the Council's enforcers, an elite fleet feared across the galaxy. They had stayed neutral thus far, but if they were here now, it meant only one thing. "They're coming to bail the Council out," Vasquez muttered. Steele straightened, his mind already racing through tactical responses. "How many ships?" 87 confirmed, including 4 dreadnoughts. A serious force but not insurmountable. Humanity's fleet was battered, but it still outmatched the Zelari in firepower and tactical ingenuity. The Council's desperation had forced them to call in their final ace, but Steele would make sure it wasn't enough. "Battle stations," Steele commanded. "They've just sealed their fate." The void ignited in a storm of light as the two fleets clashed. Human railguns tore through Zelari shields, while the alien plasma cannons scorched the blackness with neon devastation. The first minutes of the engagement saw 3 of the enemy's cruisers shredded in a brutal crossfire, their hulls splitting apart in violent detonations. Aboard his flagship, High Warlord Zerthak of the Zelari Dominion snarled at the human defiance. "Fools," he spat, mandibles clicking. "They do not know their place." His fleet had come expecting a fractured human force, weakened from the siege below. Instead, they had found a species that refused to kneel, a fleet that fought with the ferocity of cornered beasts. "Deploy the annihilators," Zerthak ordered. "Erase them from existence." From the depths of the Zelari Armada, a formation of specialized warships emerged, their dark hulls bristling with energy disruptors. These were humanity's true test. Vessels designed to consume shields, to sap power from even the strongest warships. Steele watched from his bridge as the annihilators advanced. "They think they have us figured out," he murmured. "Let's prove them wrong." Across the fleet, human warships adapted instantly, diverting power from shields to kinetic weapons. If the annihilators could drain energy, humanity would simply fight with brute force. Railgun rounds, solid tungsten slugs traveling at near-light speeds, ripped through the annihilators' armor, bypassing their energy-sapping capabilities. One by one, the dark ships buckled and died, their hulls torn apart by sheer human ingenuity. Panic set in among the Zelari. Their greatest weapons were being countered in real time. Zerthak watched in disbelief as his warships fell like prey to a predator that had learned all its weaknesses. And then the killing blow came. The UNS Retribution, humanity's mightiest dreadnought, powered forward, its main cannons unleashing a planet-cracking salvo. The Zelari flagship took the full brunt of the assault, its shields collapsing, its structure imploding in a catastrophic explosion that consumed thousands of its crew instantly. Zerthak died without a final word. The Zelari fleet, leaderless and broken, scattered. Steele exhaled. "Status." "Victory, sir," Vasquez confirmed. "The enemy is in full retreat." Steele allowed himself the smallest nod. The Galactic Council had called for its last hope. Humanity had answered with finality. Now nothing stood between them and the endgame. "The Citadel is ours," O'Connell reported from below. "Council leadership is captured. Steele's gaze hardened. Then it's time for their sentence. The galaxy had thought humanity weak. But today the truth was clear. Humanity was inevitable. And the Council's reign was over. The Council chamber was in ruins. The once pristine marble floors were cracked and smeared with soot. Shattered data screens flickered, struggling to broadcast the unraveling fate of the galaxy. Council members huddled together, their robes of office scorched and torn, the grandeur of their authority reduced to ashes. Admiral Kessler stood before them, unyielding, his armored silhouette framed by the wreckage of the Great Hall. Behind him, the holographic display of Earth's armada pulsed with growing intensity. The countdown to planetary bombardment had begun. "Final chance," Kessler said, his voice calm but resolute. "Surrender. Stand down. Recognize humanity as an equal force, or witness the consequences." High Chancellor Valen staggered forward, clutching a wounded arm, his elongated features twisted in defiance and desperation. "You would destroy an entire world? Reduce this council to rubble? Humanity would become the very monster you claim to stand against." Kessler didn't flinch. "No. We would be the monster you created. For centuries, you have denied us a place among you. You have dismissed our warnings. You have waged wars through proxy and strangled us with sanctions. And now, at the brink of your own destruction, you speak of morality?" A distant explosion rocked the chamber. The council members flinched as automated security reports scrolled across the fractured data screens. The Earth fleet had begun striking military installations, targeting weapons facilities and strategic outposts with precision. The council's defenses were crumbling. Their fleets were overwhelmed. The realization sank in. It was over. A trembling voice spoke up, a Zalthuran delegate, her pale blue skin sickly under the emergency lighting. We cannot stop you. We admit defeat. But if you destroy this world, you leave nothing to govern. No peace. Only fire and ruin." Kessler narrowed his eyes. The weight of the moment pressed against him like a gravitational collapse. He had fought for decades to bring humanity to this point, to force recognition, to demand justice. The power to end this war rested in his hands. But annihilation had never been the goal. Victory wasn't just about winning the war. It was about ensuring it never needed to be fought again. Kessler turned his gaze to the looming figure of General Hargrin, the supreme commander of the Council's defense forces. The reptilian warlord was battered, his uniform torn, his clawed hands curled into fists. A creature bred for war, now on the verge of surrender. "You wanted war," Kessler said to Hargrin. "You got it. And now we offer you something else. A choice." The chamber fell silent. Kessler tapped his wrist interface. The orbital bombardment countdown halted. "You will dissolve the current council," Kessler continued, his voice sharp as steel. "A new one will be formed with equal representation, including humanity. The oppression of developing civilizations ends today. The exploitation of lesser races ends today. And if any of you break this new accord, humanity will not return as conquerors." He stepped forward, towering over the broken council. "We will return as executioners." Hargrin's golden eyes flickered between defiance and realization. Then, slowly he dropped his blaster rifle to the ground. It clattered against the marble with a finality that echoed across the chamber. One by one, the remaining council members did the same. A notification chimed in Kessler's earpiece. Fleet Command was standing by for orders. "Admiral?" came Captain Alvarez's voice. "Your command?" Kessler exhaled. "Stand down bombardment. Pull back our heavy assault wings but maintain formation. We're staying until the new accords are signed." Across the galaxy, news of humanity's triumph spread like wildfire. The era of subjugation was over. The Galactic Council had fallen, not to annihilation but to revolution. The war had ended. But the legend of humanity had just begun.